Hails and welcome to Rauta 75. It's closer to the end of the year, so the last episode for 2022, and we'll continue with this kind of stuff early 2023. However, because I'm temporarily moving out of country, probably won't be with the CDs for the time I am out from Finland. Let's do this once again in alphabetical order, so 5 different releases, 5 different styles, and should not come as a big surprise to followers that none of these are exactly great. However, there are a couple of picks which I want to point out when we get to the end of it. But let's do it in alphabetical order and I'll explain what's going on. First, we'll head to Greece with a band called Diablery with an album called Candles. This one runs for some 65 minutes. It's a 2021 release and the style is melodic black metal. However, unlike many other Greek black metal ones, this isn't exactly the warm-sounding, typical Greek black metal. I'm talking about bands like Varathron, Red Christ, Zemiel, Kaviriat, Iria, and the like, which have the kind of a trademark Greek sound, if you will. Candles is of different breed. This is closer to what I could say Nordic black metal in the terms of being very melodic, somewhat atmospheric, and unfortunately not exactly very catchy. Well, this is pro-made in so many ways when it comes to riffs and such, or melodies, production, vocals and everything here. Nothing really sticks. It's almost like you're endlessly waiting for some really good songs to appear, and then when the finally album is done after more than 1 hour, you're like overwhelmed by sheer mediocrity this album has to offer. Mind you, mediocrity doesn't mean bad. Sometimes people just take my so-called negativity way more negative what I'm implying here. My point here is, when I say mediocrity, it means very, very listenable, totally like okay in so many ways, but not exactly something that resonates with me, power and memorability, catchiness and all that stuff. The thing here is, these kind of melodic black metal albums have been done many, many times and way better often. Luckily, there are worse albums than that. But the thing here is, Diablery is easy to listen, but as easy to forget. There's nothing, exactly nothing that is something what I would call powerful, meaningful, impactful, and all kind of fools, if you want to know what I mean. Thing is, it's very, very digestible. But does it really matter? I mean, is it enough for you to check out the band that isn't just like outright good? That's up for you to decide. Then out of the wrapping comes this band which has a ridiculous name, KHNVM. You could just add some kind of vowels there, Kevenum or Kvenum or whatever. Actually, it's called something like Kenum or something like that. And this one is Portals of Oblivion. As you can pretty much figure out, these guys are not corpse-painted black metal heads, but more like death metal dudes, and their dark death metal is basically something that should work for a lot of us. That is, people who grew up in the 90s and were listening to death metal all the time. And as you can see, this one is promo punctured here so that nobody's making profit out of these superior albums. Unfortunately, this album is not superior. It's almost useless. No, this is pretty much mediocrity in the death metal sense, whereas Diablery was that. Actually, Diablery is a little bit better than that because this is exactly a good example how to do dark death metal in a way that it's very, very much forgotten right after you take it from your CD player. I gave this a few spins and I was like, man, how can an album being a little bit more than 30 minutes or so be so boring? That is, once again, not exactly shitty, not exactly bad, but something that is just meaningless. I mean, there are plenty of immolation and incantation copies all around the world which are just doing exactly the same, more or less. Some are better, some are worse. But with those albums, you're starting to wonder, what happened to good riffs? What happened to catchier parts? I'm talking about Morbid Angels and Cannibal Corpses and all that stuff here, which are classics for a reason. When you just come up with a bunch of like, okay, let's slow tune our guitars, let's just let it sound and add some basic growly vocals there, it's not gonna cut it. Maybe it would have been impactful, say 1988 when the genre was, new and everything was fresh and you were just looking for some new bands. But by the time you get 90s, all this became like being there, done that, heard it. And since that, you really either have to have something really impactful, something different, or for fuck's sake, good riffs and good songs to really make waves. It's just not gonna cut it if you're just like, okay, this is really dark and we have low tune, down-tuned guitars, and we can growl too. Like, yeah, who would have guessed? Very, very demo-like material. Not bad, but in my opinion, way too forgettable. A little bit better it gets with this band called Kasvoton, which translates to Faceless. Comes from Finland, and as you can see, here it says Portit, gates, and if you turn it upside down, Takaisin syvyyksiin, back to the abyss, back to the depths. The thing here is, this is a double album, and self-financed one. Comes with 2 slipcases, both featuring music less than 40 minutes, but more than half an hour. CDR, like the typical self-financed albums, unfortunately, so often are. Which means not all CD players will accept this. Most, however, will, but pickier, old school ones, like I sometimes have trouble playing this one. Luckily, it was able to play this one nicely. Or these ones, actually. But it wasn't given. My CD player had a little bit trouble of, like figuring out whether or this is able to be indexed. Anyway, these 2 albums are basically carved from the same set of stone, so it's basically a double album with just one style. This band used to be a trio, now working with 4-man lineup. It's offering you kind of a darker end of death metal, but also way more groovier than, for example, what the Gnome was doing. The thing here is, these guys are not shy to flirt with a little bit of trashiness, but also to have impactful, fast forward pace. I mean, high tempo and all that stuff, where they just give you punches left and right and make it sound actually worthwhile. The production is very solid. The growly vocals, well, they could be better, but they're doing their job just okay, I guess. Overall, the biggest minus here is it's too full of filler riffs. That is, if you could combine the best of these 2 albums into one and then make that 40 minutes of an album out of this, something like 75 minutes or so, this could be really good. Now it's more like decent, like, yeah, you have some good ideas here and there, and you're kind of nice to listen to, but where are the best songs? Because you really have those nice riffs, and by nice riffs I mean death metal riffs, which are proper, catchy, kicking ass and all that stuff. But like I said, there are filler parts too much here and there, where it more like feels like this is still too much of a demo phase release. But give it a chance. I think it's actually promising, even if not outright good. Another one from Finland, and that is, by the way, 2020-22 release, much like this one, Pahan, Ikoni, roughly translated as Icon of Evil. And this is Ikonoklasti, Iconoclast. I don't know why I keep translating this. This is also self-financed, and this is more like dead trash. And one could say a little bit more on the at the gate side when it comes to vocals and all that stuff. It's almost like they're taking their vocal style from black metal screaminess rather than, typical death metal growliness. And once you can see, this is not a CD release, but a proper CD. And this album has a really, really good production. Everything really here supports, whether we're talking about those powerful drums or tough ass guitar sound, it's solid. This production is as good as basically you can come with a self-financed release, or at least how I feel about it, this release. And there are lots of good songs and good, well, more like good riffs than individual songs, but the point here is this has the basically same problems and same success points as Kasvoton. The thing here is, a lot of those riffs are really groovy and they're almost like kicking your ass, but there are also parts where you feel like, okay, why is this part there? And it's like sometimes going kind of too melodic for its own style and all. But this is actually quite a promising thing, and as such, on the same level with Kasvoton. The thing here is, both have promising ideas, and it's kind of a wonder that they're not signed to a label, because they are good enough for that. But something is still missing from being actual really good ones. But these both bands, they show a lot of promise. The last and definitely not least is also from Finland. This is Solacide, and this is the second album, Fall from Eternity, from 2021. This band goes all the way back to 90s with their previous moniker, Dim Moonlight, and they have only 2 albums out because they changed the name to Solacide in the 2000s, and I think it was 2016 when they made their first album, I think, and so it took like 5 years to do a second one. The previous ones, the EPs and demos, they were done with less time between the releases. So something has happened here because the band decided to use more time in doing this album. Now, production-wise, this sounds as solid as it could be. That is, you know, it's kind of clean, nice, melodic, powerful. Instruments are, you know, very distinct in style and all. So it kind of makes a lot of sense to go with this kind of a production. It's not the heaviest or most badass out there, but it totally fits this kind of a melodic black metal. Some have labeled this band also something like progressive black metal, but to be honest, I think that term is a little bit loosely used here because not too progressive. I mean, this is not exactly our next avant-garde-ish band, but there are pointers when this album is going to push their limits and going a little bit off-road, at least if you're thinking of typical melodic black metal. For instance, a lot of these riffs towards the end of the album are more like melodic metal or melodeath to begin with, reminding me bands like Insomnium or Ammonamoth or even Arch Enemy. So there are definitely those kind of guitar leads or melodic parts which kind of sliding away from black metal. But then again, having black metal raspy vocals and a lot of kind of black metal-ish riffs, especially early album, it is definitely on the black metal side too. So to use in this comparison, one leg being the kind of a melodic death metal here, and the other one is kind of a black metal. It's like, hey, depending on which shoe are you standing on, it kind of changes the weight here. I don't know if this makes sense, but I hope you get the idea what I'm talking about. So partially melodic black metal, partially just melodic extreme metal. Not exactly death metallic, but definitely having that one. So if you're looking from a black metal purist point of view, might not be your cup of tea. But then again, if you are more about melodies and less about black metal, might actually be a really good one for you. So out of these 5 different albums, I would say 3 kind of stand out, and the winner of this Indie 5 would be Solacide from 2021. As always, links are provided in the description box, so should you want to listen some of these, well, check out the links provided, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for being here, and see you soon. More review videos coming your way.